Morning, everyone. Welcome back to our morning coffee time live stream for Friday, October the 2nd. And today is the Pawarana day for us here at the Pacific Hermitage, meaning we've reached the end of the Vasa. And the monks will have some observances to do today, a bit later. As those who are here on a daily basis know too, it's also the last day that my brothers and good friends Ajahn Krunadamo and Venerable Rakito be here with me this year. So both of them are doing copious loads of laundry and packing and cleaning and washing and arranging things and getting ready for a very early morning departure tomorrow. So as of the early mornings of the hour tomorrow, I'll become a bit more of a hermit and move into a truly solitary living situation for a few weeks. So today being the theme of the Pavarana ceremony, as I mentioned a few days ago, it is a ceremony that the Buddha established for the monks to take up after they've been living together for this period of the Vasa period. And he gave it such importance that it replaces our rule summary recitation, which needs to happen if 4 or more monks are living together in the same area. Doesn't even need to be a monastery. So you could have monks living in the forest in within walking distance, or you could be living alone, and if there are monks that are near enough by that it's not a heroic effort to get there, the Buddha laid down a training for the monks to gather together and to declare their purity to one another, and if they had any minor infractions, to clear those with their fellow samanas, their fellow monastics, acknowledge the fault, and determine to be more careful going forward to keep the monastic training as pure as possible. And then recite a rule summary. And the tradition in our monasteries is to do that from memory in the Pali language, which takes nearly an hour of fast, almost auctioneer style speed recitation. And it is a large part of the monastic calendar and something given great importance. It can be suspended for reasons of imminent threat, wildfire, etc., but not for any trivial reasons. And even if a monk is very sick, they have to be profoundly unwell and send their what's called the chanda. I forget what the English word is for this. It's kind of like their permission for the Sangha to do business and make decisions in their absence. And this happens every full moon and new moon, the only exception being some exceptionally dangerous situation or the annual Pawarana ceremony. And Pawarana means to invite, and in particular, it's to invite your fellow practitioners, your fellow samanas, your fellow monastics to give admonition to your practice of Dhamma, your practice of Vinaya. Feedback, as we would say, to open yourself up to the monks that you've been living with for a period of time, who might now have had an opportunity to see you and know you and kind of sense how it is that you're living the holy life. And hopefully you've developed a relationship, a good relationship, a sense of trust and care, so that that can be done in a way that's mutually beneficial, both for yourself, but also for the Sangha. And although we are responsible for cleaning up this mess of avijja and tanha, ignorance and craving, that is fueling the habits of dukkha in our life, as I'm fond of reflecting, it's not all that possible to do it in isolation. We need a little help from our friends. And there's a whole social context that is recognized by the way the Buddha taught, and also how he arranged his monastic communities. So the theme for today in the monastery is the value of that social dimension of renewing our commitment to being open to sharing and receiving feedback in a skillful way. And it's not just something that you have to wait for a year to happen in a ceremony. In fact, oftentimes the ceremony is rather formal, but it's a strong reminder of our shared commitment to helping one another and giving each other honest, timely, useful, kind feedback on how it is that we're doing. And the Buddha, in talking about admonition or feedback or people that might point out where it is that we're failing to live up to our commitments, to live with generosity and virtue and energy and clarity, and to live up to the social contract that we have. And we have quite a detailed social contract in the monastic Sangha as laid down by the Buddha, but also our teachers and various monasteries have ways of doing things, protocols, agreements about how it is that we live together. And it's an honor and should be looked upon as a treasure if somebody is willing to point out our faults. It's easier to relate to it as a treasure if it's somebody that we have faith and confidence in, and there's a measure of kindness and trust, and if it's done in the most appropriate way. The most difficult defilements to overcome are the ones of delusion. It is exceedingly difficult to see ourselves with the kind of clarity that is often necessary. One of the things that often surprises me when I've had various insights come together in my personal practices, how it is that I hadn't seen it in quite that way. Like sometimes there's various habits that we have, various obstacles that are there kind of hindering our progress in practice, and we're dimly aware of them, or we have some awareness of them, but it lacks a certain articulation or certain clarity that sometimes only kind of comes when certain conditions come to be. Sometimes that might be an extra bit of lucidity and clarity from our meditation. It's like part of the value of this endeavor to continually practice and nurture our skill in entering into states of clarity and lucidity and then emerging back out of them is giving us this very regular opportunity to see ourselves and feel about ourselves in a way that we might not otherwise have much of an opportunity to. But also, we are social animals and living in community and sharing that endeavor to learn, to grow, to understand ourselves, to contemplate Dhamma, to constantly be evaluating the stuff of our life, the stuff of our relationships, the challenges in light of Dhamma, and seeing how that plays out for ourselves and others, and being willing and able to give and receive feedback and admonition plays a critical role in increasing the likelihood that we can wake up. Like there's some striking passages in the monastic discipline, and maybe in a few suttas, where the Buddha talks about just how dangerous it is to be cut off from that. And one of the suttas that comes to mind right now is the Buddha has this encounter with somebody who's curious about how it is that he trains his monks. I think it's called the Kasi Sutta. And the Buddha talks about 4 types of horses. He says his monks are like 4 types of horses. Some are easier to train than others. And the first one is very easy to train or motivate. And the image the Buddha is using is like somebody using a goad or a whip. And the first horse, even the shadow of the whip's enough to get him to do what you want or to run. And some people are like that. They just need a little admonition or a little reminder or a mirror to see what it is that they need to do to correct themselves. Some need a light tap. Some need a firm smack. And then some you can beat and beat and beat, and they still won't go. And the person who's having this exchange with the Buddha says something actually rather kind of humorous, sort of, surely the Tathagata does not beat those monks, or something like, surely the Tathagata doesn't support that kind of violence. So what do you do with somebody like that? What do you do with somebody that's that difficult to train, who's incorrigible? Like, no matter how much you admonish them, they don't correct course. And the Buddha just says, you don't. Like, at some point, you just withdraw that. If it's clear that they're just of the view or the temperament or something that they can't receive that, then you cut them off. And without that, they do not grow. In fact, they die in their endeavor to sort of develop the Dhamma. So it's a striking analogy of just how important it is to have friends and teachers that can help us uncover that buried treasure, to shine a light, to offer constructive admonition, feedback. And without it, a whole host of opportunities for developing and growing die in us. If we don't have that, and we're not open to that, or we haven't cultivated the ability to be responsive to that. And on a day like today, it's good to bring these themes up for recollection and just re-examine what our attitude is towards being open to the kind of honesty to sort of see where it is that we err, see where it is that we are not living up to the commitments that we have, and in particular, the kind of commitment to rise up, to do what's necessary to develop this Dhamma and this discipline that leads us into increasing goodness and freedom from suffering. And how is it that we can humble ourselves and grow the capacity to see what we can for ourselves, but to be open to and to have that attitude of welcoming feedback from others and guidance from others, even if it's a bit painful, even if it hurts sometimes, even if it's not done in the most beautiful or skillful way. Maybe even especially when it's not done in the most skillful way. Like Buddha says, even in that circumstance, one shouldn't completely dismiss it. One should always be a little curious to sort of focus in on this kind of question, like, is there some truth in that? And sometimes just that can keep us from maybe sliding into some of the defensive postures we take, or backbiting, or responding with some other unskillful emotion, like anger. So a little reflection on the value of feedback and the Buddha's attitude to that, and how it fits into our training as monastics on this day, the Pawarana day of 2020. I have a meeting this morning very shortly after this all ends, so I have a hard out, as they say, so I'll scan through the questions. I see quite a few things highlighted here, but I won't have much time for questions today. Is it okay to focus on the breath in a more open way rather than concentrated on the nose? I often get headaches, facial tension when doing this. Also, how long should we meditate? So, Sunny, I think it's okay to focus on the breath. There's many ways we can do it, and there's even some debate about how to interpret the instructions that sit in the suttas. And the thing I would attend to is whatever technique that you use is the mind moving along the path of overcoming the hindrances and arousing the kind of factors of good meditation that the Buddha advocates, in particular the jhana factors. And if you're focusing in some way, where headaches or facial tension are coming up, then finding some other way to practice breath meditation could be helpful. And early on, I had similar problems with this. And it was partially because how it is I was conceiving of the goal of meditation. Many texts talk about bringing the mind to single pointedness. And if we put too much effort, there's too much desire to kind of really force the mind to sort of settle down and move towards this imagined experience of single pointed awareness, that can cause tension and headaches, especially if one's like, I would find myself using my eyes almost like trying to see the breath because I was trying to bring all of my awareness and focus the mind. And I thought of it almost like this activity of taking the energy and the power of consciousness and the mind and like a magnifying glass, sort of focusing it in sort of to a bright, lucid, small point of brilliant light. And the initial instructions I had were to focus at the tip of the nose. And there's like a feeling sensation that would come at the tip of the nose where I was attending to it that was quite interesting and unusual, and I would just pull all of my awareness there and try to hold it there, but the effort wasn't balanced. There was too much craving and desire. And I had a very maybe simplistic idea of what it is that I was trying to achieve with that style of focusing. So I still often focus at the tip of the nose, but I think of it more as just sitting there and seeing if I can perfect my ability to feel the sensation of the breath passing back and forth through that point in the initial stages. And that feels much more kind of easeful and doesn't lead to those problems. You might look at Ajahn Sona's descriptions of breath meditation. He talks about starting at the tip of the nose, but focusing on the air and the airiness. And like as we start to develop an enhanced, connected attention that's immersed in the experience of the breath, that can happen sort of like in the head. It's almost like you're experiencing the breath as this airy experience inside the emptiness of your head. Of course, your head is not empty, but the conscious experience as we kind of get into the sensations of the breath can be perceived in that way. And then there's other styles of doing something a bit like that, sort of training to attentive breath awareness in a more whole body sense. So my advice would be look at those teachings, look to those teachings of Ajahn Sona and try that out, see if that helps. Also just look at how it is that you're thinking about the goal of meditation and how what's the quality of effort you're bringing to the meditation, and see if there's ways that you can adjust it so that it's lessening that problem. But it's quite a common problem that people have, and sometimes it just takes some experimentation to figure out how to alleviate it. Maybe one more, but quickly. I have to get going. Sometime last week you mentioned don't confuse pleasure for happiness. Could you expound upon this? Well, Christine, this is a little phrase I came up with in trying to come up with some very shorthand way to talk about some of the elements of the gradual training of the Buddha. And this one in particular relates to cultivation of nekkhamma, which is often translated as renunciation. But in thinking about what the Buddha is trying to get at with renunciation, it's changing the investment and the orientation or the relationship that we have to the sense world. And by default, sensual pleasure oftentimes is a massive part of our strategy for happiness and well-being. And the Buddha talks about the liability in having that relationship to the sense realm. He talks about the gratification, the danger, and the escape of sense pleasures. He encourages a more modest and restrained and simple relationship to the sense realm, as that conduces to developing more sublime and higher forms of happiness. So that gives a little definition maybe for today, and that's about all the time I have for it. So, okay, friends, good to see so many people here. Almost 100 today. So, happy Pawarna Day. And a little uncertain how things are going to play out in the next bit of time while I'm living here by myself and trying to balance the duties with the morning live streams and the pujas, but I haven't made any firm decisions yet. but there might be some changes ahead here. But I'll continue sitting and see how solitary sitting and chanting works for at least a few days on our YouTube channel to support the people that have been tuning into that. Maybe I'd encourage a few more people to get up early and practice, or a few more people to practice chanting and doing reflections. And I will see you all on Monday for the morning coffee live stream. Happy Purana Day. Bye for now.